Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson. The podcast is brought to you by Pick Six, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Use code RWPicks for $50 in Pick Six credits with a $5 deposit. This week, we've got a fun show. Dominic Rello, a.k.a. at the Bullpen Guru on Twitter, and I have been in the Too Early Meatball Draft, which is the first high stakes draft of the year. This will be the third year of that Too Early Draft, and that'll be coming up here. We don't have an official start date, but I would guess we'll be drafting in about a week or two. And so I wanted to have Dom on and talk about some aspects of prepping for this Too Early Draft, which guys we think are going to be first rounders, which guys are really excited to see where they go and that kind of thing. So really excited for this one. Looking ahead to 2025 is sometimes fun if your 2024 teams aren't doing as well as you hoped. So should be a good episode. Dom, what have you done or what do you plan to do, I guess, to sort of prep for a draft where we'll be doing potentially 15 rounds this time? Last year we did 7, but right. I think we're going to do more than 7 this time. So what goes into it for you kind of prepping for a draft when we've still got, 6 weeks left in the season?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. This is guess an honor, you could say. I've been RotoWire listener for years, so it was kind of a surreal thing where it's like, I get a notification on my phone like RotoWire's live, and then it's like, but it's with me. So, so first off, thank you for that. But
well,
then,
yeah, of course,
what goes into the last year. Yeah, last year was the first year that I did the league, so I didn't really have anything to go off of. So I ran like projections for the last 2 months, and was very like robotic about that. The problem with that is like when you're doing rest of season projections, it's missing guys that are injured, guys that haven't been called up, things like that. So I think this year I'm gonna go old school. I'm just gonna like write out a list of maybe like 200 guys, kind of just ranking old school way, and draft that way and just have fun with it. I do enough drafts, throughout the off season and next spring that I can be much more mechanical with those drafts. This one I'm going to just have fun and just kind of roll with it old school way. So, prepping for this was good because I at least knocked out what I think to be the first round, and only 14 more rounds to go after that.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of going the exact same way as you. I think that's fun. Like we're going to have all off season to get really kind of granular with the data and stuff like that. But there's pitchers could get injured, but like position players could still get injured. I mean, there's just so much that can change, and we can look back at last year's draft board, and there's just kind of obvious players that shouldn't have fallen as far as they did, or obvious players that shouldn't have gotten as high as they did. So I think you don't want to overanalyze something like this necessarily. I think I'm going to try to group players into kind of specific, I'm going to probably skew towards infielders, I think, a little early on in terms of the hitters, especially as kind of a tiebreaker, and just kind of looking for different types of archetypes of players depending on just sort of the way the room is going. Because it's just, you don't know where people are going to, take pitching, for instance. You don't know when there's going to be a closer run. You don't know, how people are going to treat the kind of like rookies that are breaking out and that type of thing. So I think sort of being, flexible within the draft is kind of important too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Like kind of just like grouping things together. So that way, like if there is a closer run, you're like, all right, well, who's my next closer? If there is a, whatever kind of catcher run, all right, who's my next catcher? Like, are they a guy that would make sense to go in this range, or should I pivot and look somewhere else? So, I like that. I like that thought process.
Is there any, if you were to kind of look at just some sort of set of projections just to kind of double check kind of like, well, how actually good is this guy maybe? Like, are you looking at like Steamer 600? Are you looking at just rest of season projections? Like, is there one that you would maybe go to over something else?
Yeah, I mean, last year I think what I did was I ran the Steamer rest of season. I think it was for like the last. I think I ran it on August 1st, knowing that we would have this draft. So I ran it August 1st and then tried to like quote unquote annualize it, like really sloppy, like 3x it, and assume that that gets you a full season's worth of projections based on the most recent skills, performance and things like that. That's probably the route I would go if I were to do it again. But like I said, I just don't think I spent so much time doing that, running an SGP on it, thinking about guys, about who were missing, whose playing time I think is going to tick up versus what they are projected for the rest of the year. I was just I spent probably so much time doing that that I probably could have spent less time just like I said, old school way, like running my own list off the top of my head. I think you're in the same boat as me. I'm a baseball only player, like 20, year round baseball focused. So I don't have any football distractions, football drafts or anything like that. So I think that's my advantage for these early drafts is that, I'm so locked in on baseball, through whatever, through October that um I'm just ready to go for these early drafts just based on everything that's been going on and that I've been paying attention to. So um, I think I can just leverage that and not be, like I said, so like mechanical.
Yeah, I think it helps for me that I'm like constantly having to update rankings and stuff like that. And
Oh
and
yeah.
each of the last 2 years, I've kind of leaned on. I've always had a dynasty rankings update that's gone live on the site. Roughly like a week before we've drafted each of the last 2 years, and so I kind of lean on that a little bit just to sort of make sure I know like where guys are sort of trending and that type of thing. And sometimes that'll potentially like inform, a guy that I think might be undervalued by the group. But yeah, I mean, really excited for this. I'm going to share last year's draft board here, and we're going to maybe talk about some things that we might have done differently, or we might do differently based on how last year's draft went. So you were picking, let's see, you were picking ninth. I was picking
Nine.
fourth. Was there, I guess we'll start. So we did 7 rounds before calling it a night last year. And you went with Jose Ramirez, Matt Olson, Josh Hader, Matt McClain, Aaron Nola, Justin Verlander, and Andres Munoz with your first 7 picks. So is there anything like you take from that as sort of like, I did this last year, it didn't work out, and I'm going to adjust something, or is it just kind of certain cases where guys got injured and that's why it didn't work out?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I'm in 11th, so I think there's a lot of things that went wrong in the draft. But in the first 7 rounds, there's nothing like too terrible. I mean, obviously the McLean thing is bad, but I didn't know that he was going to be hurt, when we drafted then. So like, I'm not gonna beat myself up over that. What I will beat myself up over is the fact that I didn't get enough depth behind him at shortstop. So I've been taking a 0 at my shortstop position the entire year. McLean has been in my shortstop slot. The only other shortstop eligible guy I took behind him was Ronnie Mauricio. So there is an example of the dangers that you could run into when you draft this early is like I need to prioritize even like those multi-eligible guys like late in the draft, just making sure I have like a healthy body, in the event of injuries. So that one's pretty bad, but I'm not going to beat myself up too bad over that. I will say, like, if I did the route of like just making a list of players for last year, I would have taken Harper over Olsen. So that's a good learning experience where like I was much, I if you look at my drafts the rest of the DC season, I was taking Harper at the end of the first round, early second. So that's a swap I would have definitely made. And then probably the third thing in those first 7 rounds is wouldn't have taken a 41-year-old pitcher in August of of the prior of the prior year, for the following year's draft. I just think like there's you see it. There's just so much risk in having somebody that old being relying on him for 160, 170 innings. Like that's what you want out of your SP2, especially a round 6 pick. And I probably didn't need to make that pick. I probably could have gotten another bat. There's plenty of pitching later, as you can see, like the Dylan Cease round 9. I think Sale and Rodon went in like round 10, 11 or something like that. So there's plenty of profitable picks after that point that I didn't need to take Verlander there. So that's something else as well. Just like being a little more conservative in terms of like pitching that early, making sure like Nola round 5 is great. He's going to give you 200 quality innings, but the Verlander one, I kind of offset the profit from the Nola pick with taking Verlander there. So I would say like I'd give myself like a C plus for those first 7 round picks. I don't know what do you what about yourself?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna quickly on like the point about McLean. Like, I'm in some spots where I'm not necessarily taking like full zeros, but I'm taking what amounts to like a zero by just
Mhm.
starting a guy that's like a bench player, and that's always sort of happening for me at infield spots. And in the past, it's kind of weird because it's like every year I'm like trying to adjust a little bit with my DC strategy, and I felt like 2 years ago those spots where I was taking zeros were outfield spots, or semi zeros were outfield spots, and then this year it's been infielders, and so it's just yeah, it is kind of a challenge every year with DCs. Like you don't want to over adjust and go
Yeah,
the other way too far just to make up for something that went wrong the previous year.
right.
So yeah, I mean, you definitely got to have your bases covered, because that's a good way to just be frustrated all season. Especially like some of my teams where it's like I think I on the whole maybe drafted the best, but because I have a couple spots where I'm just not getting production, it's just not going to end up leading to the result I want. Um, as for my team, yeah, I went out of the 4 hole. I went Julio Rodriguez, Emmanuel Clase, Juan Soto, Freddie Peralta, Will Smith, David Bednar, and Sean Murphy. Uh, I really like that start. The Sean Murphy pick has been a disaster. Was probably a pick that I was regretting. Um, Honestly, like minutes after I made the pick, because I think I don't think I had Sean Murphy anywhere last year, and I hadn't been as on top of just how poorly he'd played in like the I don't know 6 to 8 weeks, I guess, leading up to this draft. Like I think he got off to a good start last year, and
Right.
pretty much all his production was from there. And I just remember like taking Sean Murphy as just kind of like this is going to be sort of my boring but sort of safe way of getting 2 really good catchers with Will Smith and Sean Murphy. There's a lot of exciting players I could go after here, but no need to force it. And so I took the guy that I thought was the best catcher on the board there, Sean Murphy. I really regret that one. I don't really regret too much else from the rest of the 7 picks from last year. The bulk of my mistakes came in the ensuing 43 rounds. Getting Juan Soto in the 3rd round, and currently I'm in 6th place. I could still cash, but I'm definitely not going to get into the top 2. So kind of a bummer to not be doing a little bit better with Juan Soto in the 3rd round.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in 11th, so my I'd be killing to be in 6th, but that's we got this year to correct our mistakes. But yeah, I think that's a good point though what you said about like trying not to overcorrect what happened, what didn't work last year, and because you constantly like chasing your tail, you just have to you know be confident in your analysis on guys, and it could just be a thing where it's just like there's a high amount of injuries in the infield that are causing you to have zeros as opposed to the fact that you didn't necessarily draft correctly and stuff like that. But I definitely want to be cognizant of, like I said, just trying to make sure I have some multi-eligible guys. Just drafting this early, having the ability to cover is great. Like, I know we might talk about it a little later. The two teams that are atop these leagues, atop this league, I just looked and like they have MLB quality players like throughout their draft, and it's just like, yeah, they did miss on some early picks, but they hit like round 40 picks. So when you get MLB production from guys that taken that late, that's a huge boon. That covers you in case of anything, in case of injuries, in case of guys not getting called up, underperformance, anything like that. So yeah, where I was taking Samad Taylor, other people were taking JJ Bleday around like 48, and that's a game changer for your team in these contests.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will. I don't know if we'll quite get to looking at their exact builds, but Jason DuPont, great NFBC player, awesome guy to hang out with. He's in first place. He's 41st in the overall. He's got the best team name in the league, 4 more years of Stanton. So DuPont killed it. And then Steve Weimer, also a world-class high-stakes player. And just briefly, I'll mention with Steve's team, Steve's in second place by quite a bit. He did take pitching in the first 7 rounds, but the first 2 starting pitchers he took in his draft were Sandy Alcantara and Kyle Bradish. So
and Ohtani too, who he might have also banked on getting some pitching from. So like,
right, yeah, because he took Ohtani before we knew he was just going to be UT only this year. Yeah,
right.
So yeah, it just kind of goes to show like you can't necessarily lose the league in your first 7 rounds if you're an amazing drafter like Steve is.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so anyone who's watching on YouTube, please give us a like and a subscription there. Really appreciate that. Did you ever play the over-under game with your friends? Think I can eat that slice of pizza in under 30 seconds, or I know it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter. If you have, then you're going to love Pick 6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how to play during baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code RWPicks. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. That's code RWPicks for new customers to play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. 1 per customer, non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Can certain weather conditions lead to more home runs? The atmosphere can affect how far a baseball flies by 20%. Home Run Forecast measures the weather conditions at a ballpark to tell us if the atmosphere is good or bad for ball flight during a game. An index value that rates the air is created for each game and ballpark and is displayed on a scale from 1 to 10. Home Run Forecast's premium site offers index values by the hour for each game, 24-hour forecasts, wind direction and speed, and even whether the roof will be open at certain stadiums. Home Run Forecast is offering a special for the start of the baseball season. You can get access to the premium site for the entire season for only $28, a savings of nearly 30%. Go to homerunforecast.com/RotoWire now to sign up. We've launched the new RotoWire Picks app. It offers recommendations and predictions for fantasy pick'em and player props on platforms like Prize Picks, BetMGM, and more, covering just about every sport. It's free to download on Apple and Android. Sign up within the app for a subscription to unlock all features. Existing RotoWire.com DFS/pick subscribers get instant full access with their login. Check it out now. Okay, back with Dom, the Bullpen Guru here, and we're talking about preparing for the first high stakes draft of the 2025 season, which we'll be participating in here in probably a couple weeks. Of course, Rob DiPietro, dead pull hitter, he's the one who puts it on. So big thanks to you, Rob. So Dom, if we were just doing this draft right after this podcast, I wanted you and I to kind of figure out which players we would confidently bet on going in the first round. So the first 15 picks. And so you and I have each kind of prepared our list of first round locks, if you want to call it that. Before we get to specific names, is there a number of players that you think if we were drafting today would be locks to go in the first round?
I mean, I think like 13 are locks. At least I felt like the 13 of my list is a lock. There are two that I'm like, I think I might get a little pushback on, and you could probably mix in like 5 other guys after that. But I'm pretty sure that I at least have it locked in. So I don't know. How do you want to do? You want to go back and forth? You want to go like you want to say who each of us think is the 1-1, the 1-2, that type of thing? Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I only have 11. So
Okay.
we'll start at I'll start at kind of the top. I'll just list like 6 guys that I think are six hitters that I think are definitely going in the first round, just first, and you can probably agree with the guys I list here. So I think Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson, Juan Soto, Ellie De La Cruz, Shohei Ohtani, and Aaron Judge. You got those 6?
I have those 6. Yes. So I have almost
in that order. Why don't you tell me? Or how about this? I'll do. So I have Paul Skeens next after those 6.
Okay, so I was gonna say those are the first 6 batters that I have on my list. So I have Witt, Ohtani, Judge, Ellie, Gunnar. Then I have Skeens 6 and Soto 7. That was the start of my list.
And I should have done it in like exact order. I was kind of going more on I was just basically going from my my dynasty rankings, and I didn't reorder them for redraft, but so I just quickly on these guys. I think Ellie he's like a lock to go. Top. What do you think? Like top 7, top 6?
Yeah, I think top 7. I think the top 3 is a lock in terms of the bats. It's Witt, Ohtani, Judge. I think those are going to be the top 3. Probably the top 3 picks. Definitely the top 3 hitters. And then after that, I could see Ellie being the next bat. Gunnar is kind of slowed down a bit. I mean, he's still on like a 40 homer, 210 run RBI pace, but Ellie's going to go 30-70, and the batting average everybody's concerned about really isn't detrimental to your team at all. So he can stack up so much of that steals volume that I think, I might give the edge to Ellie, just especially if you project any growth on top of what he's currently doing.
Yeah, and I don't think 2024 is going to be Ellie's career high power season.
Right.
I mean, this is as crazy as it is to say he doesn't turn 23 until January.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, you don't have to project any growth for him to be a borderline top 5 pick, but I wouldn't rule out growth. And then let's say you draft Ellie. How does that affect like the way you approach guys that you expect to steal double-digit bases over the rest of the draft? Like, are you dramatically shifting your board if you start with Ellie to kind of almost just de-emphasize steals completely the rest of the way? Not avoid guys that steal bases, but like, how much is that shifting your approach the rest of the draft? If you draft Ellie, you're assuming you've got 60 plus stolen bases, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a lot of the pressure that you feel to continue to draft speed away. Like um, it just kind of takes that pressure off. I still, I wouldn't like avoid steals and just assume that all my steals volume is going to be from Ellie, because then, if an injury happens, then you really have no speed. So
Mhm.
it's kind of just a luxury in the sense that you can kind of just like it covers such a big chunk of the steals that you need, and you just don't feel the pressure. Like, say you're in round 10 and there's a pitcher there that you don't feel should have fallen, but you're also thinking, oh, I need an outfielder with like, a 2010 outfielder, um, that's a little more balanced. Like, it just allows you the ability to kind of direct your draft slots, draft picks elsewhere. So I would say, I don't know, it just takes the pressure off. I don't think it
Yeah.
really changes how you draft at all. It just takes that pressure to continuously find speed off your shoulders.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I saw like a conversation on Twitter the other day where people were talking about, you don't want to win stolen bases by like 30 steals, but I think you nailed it. Like, you're basically, if you take Ellie, then you're not reaching for stolen bases the rest of the
Exactly.
draft. Like, you're
Exactly.
just taking, you're going after value, and if it's a guy that you think is going to steal 25 bases, that's great. But you're not sitting there and taking like Xavier Edwards at pick like 150 or something like that.
Right. Right.
So okay, so we've got Witt, Henderson, Soto, Ellie, Otani, Judge, and then you had Skeens. You said like
Yeah.
6, and then Soto 7.
hmm
Okay. So Skeens, like, well, actually, um, let's actually round out the rest of our expected first rounds, and then we can
Okay.
talk. So how about you just list the rest of your guys, and then we'll see where
Okay.
any disagreements are.
All right. So 8th, I have Mookie. 9th, I have Kyle Tucker. 10th, I have J Ram. 11th, Acuna. Um, so 12th, this was the guy at 12 that I think I might get some pushback on. So I have Royce Lewis 12. Um, J Rod 13, Tatis 14, and Scooble 15. So that's my first 15. I think the two guys that I think could fall into that second round would be Royce, and maybe even later. I get the injury risk, and people might be hesitant to take him. And then I guess maybe like Tatis, Tatis or Scooble. Those two could be guys that might fall as well. And then Acuna, I guess. So I kind of mentioned like four guys. So maybe I felt really good about my top like 11 guys, and then there's some that I could kind of push back on. But that's who I had listed out as what I think to be the first round.
Okay, so okay, Royce. I was surprised to hear you say Royce, and I absolutely love Royce Lewis. I guess I didn't even consider that he would go in the first round here,
Okay.
just because of there's just
S-
all anyone ever talks about with him is the injuries. Like,
Right.
I see almost more discourse about his injuries than how good he is. And the proof is kind of sitting right there. He's gonna be under 75 games for back-to-back seasons, most likely. I guess he could get close to maybe 75, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, he has 0 steals this year. So you're almost kind of you're drafting him as sort of like um, third base Aaron Judge with more injury risk. Um, so yeah, I that's interesting. I really wish I knew what the rest of the league thought about Royce Lewis
I
potential
mean,
first there.
I might have to put my money where my mouth is, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we did KDS based on like standings as of, whenever we
Yeah.
set the date. So I'm going to be, pretty far down. So I'm going to be drafting in this range, and I might have to put my money where my mouth is. But when I'm just looking at like his stats, and I know, I'm well aware of the injury risk, but like, I don't have much Royce, but when I don't know, maybe I have some FOMO every time he is healthy and I'm seeing him hit home runs, and I'm just like, dude, this guy, if he can stay healthy, he's gonna be a 45 home run like bat. Like I'm just looking at last year, 15 home runs, um, a 309 average, 155 WRC plus in 58 games this year, 35 games, 14 home runs, 180 WRC plus. I mean, I just looked at it like you said, like it's Judge-esque production. If he finishes the year healthy and ends up playing 75 games and he hits, 25 home runs in 75 games, I don't know. I think that production has been so awesome. And you're just banking on him staying healthy, which he hasn't done in his career. So, like I said, I put him there because the skills are like crazy. But I am well aware of the injury risk, and it's not something I'm pounding the desk for. But it's just that production with all the other guys I listed too, like Acuna. I know he's returned from an ACL injury and been 1-1 before, but you know that's a risk. Tatis, he also has a ton of injury risk, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I mean, there's kind of some injury flaws, I would say, for a lot of guys in this range, and I think Royce has the most power potential out of all these guys. So but I realize that that's going to be very debated, I guess you could say.
And this has me so excited for whatever night we do these first 15 rounds. And I also, but it makes me not excited for the off-season Royce Lewis discourse because I could see him being extremely controversial.
Yeah,
and if he, so I think what you said about if he finishes the year healthy, so he would get, let's see, the Twins have like 50 games left or so. So let's say Royce Lewis plays in like 45 of those. That would get him to about half a season. I think if he if he doesn't have another serious injury between now and the end of the season, I could see him being kind of a first round option maybe. I guess I would just be surprised if, other than you who are considering putting your money where your mouth is, I'd be surprised if anyone else in our league actually used their first rounder on him for this draft. But it's a fascinating discussion, and like I said, you don't necessarily have to just nail all these picks. Like even if you got half a season out of Royce Lewis, like DuPont's running away with the league, and his first pick was, well, he's not running away with it. Steve's right there, but like he's way up there. And his first pick was Freddie Freeman, and Freddie Freeman's got 16 homers in 106 games, and Royce Lewis
and 5 steals, right? So
and 5 steals, and Royce Lewis is 2 homers behind Freddie Freeman this year, despite playing 70 fewer games or so. So that goes into it also with like it being a DC. If you do a good job with your bench, or just a fine job with your bench, then even if you only get like 80, 90 games from Royce Lewis, theoretically you're still getting production when he's out of the lineup. So yeah, that's fun. I did not even expect to talk about Royce Lewis here, but that's exciting. Okay, so I had we were in complete agreement on Kyle Tucker and Jose Ramirez. That rounds out my top 9. The next 2 guys that I thought I was going to give lock status to, even though I think they're maybe not quite in my mind like 90%, 95% locks, but like Tariq Skubal, I do think will be the second pitcher after Skeens, and I do think we'll see 2 pitchers go in the first round. Last year, Spencer Strider. I guess we can count Ohtani, I suppose. So Ohtani, Strider, and Garrett Cole were the three pitchers who went in the first round last year. Obviously, that's kind of 0 for 3. So like that shows you the danger in drafting this early. But with Strider and Cole, they weren't. It's not like they were injured
right
shortly after the draft. They didn't get injured until it was too late for everyone.
Yep.
So yeah, I think Skubal will be the second pitcher, and then I had I had Ronald Acuna as sort of my guy. I felt next most confident about. I did not have Betts or Tatis as locks. I did have them right on that kind of borderline, but Tatis he's an interesting one because he's just. I wasn't drafting him this year where he was going like 6th overall or something like that.
Yep.
So far, he's obviously on the shelf right now, but he's got a 279 average, 14 homers, 8 steals in 80 games. It's not that crazy of counting stat production from Tatis. At least I would imagine a lot of the people that drafted him would have expected more than 14 homers and 8 steals in half a season from him. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to be kind of borderline. Maybe like a guy that goes sort of at the turn.
Early too. Yeah. It's possible. I mean, I know he's still only going to be 26 next year, which is crazy. I think like the 2020, 2021 seasons with like insane 20% barrel rates are gone. But he's still improving, like making better swing decisions, dropping the K rate. The team around him is getting better. If I would take a 30-20 season from him, I guess maybe at pick 6 where he's going, maybe that's a little light. I do hear what you're saying. I think maybe the just the name appeal is like too much to pass up at the end of the first, but
Yeah.
I would take him early second. Like I said, I'm assuming I'm redrafting in the back half of the first round, so I would definitely take a second round Tatis.
Would you pair Royce Lewis and
Tatis? I don't know if there's enough steals there for the first 2 picks to be like. I think it'd be tough. I'd probably
go big or go home.
Yeah, right. It's fun. I probably wouldn't do that knowing myself, but it's an interesting proposition.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over Kyle Tucker, but he's a guy that has really had no durability issues prior to this season, and he was just outrageously productive before getting injured. So it's just kind of, I mean, I don't think he was going to go like 50-30, but like that was kind of the pace he was on.
Yeah, I mean, he had 19 home runs in 60 games and 82 runs in RBIs. That's like a 50 homer, 240 run RBI pace for a guy that's, I don't know how old's Tucker. 20. He's going to be like 27 next year.
He's 27 right now. He turns 28 now.
Okay, and that's going to be his walk year too. So it'll be, I think it's his walk year.
Right. Next year. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I love Tucker. I think I have him in a couple of spots. The injury was rough, but taking the production I've gotten so far and still have him on my bench, waiting for him to get back desperately. But I think he's a beast. He's for sure. I think he's right after those first 7 that we listed. That should go in this draft.
Yeah, and I think Ramirez is older than these guys we're kind of talking about as sort of late first round potential guys, but he's just so much steady. He's so steady.
Steady, exactly.
Like all these guys we're talking about, like Acuna, Tatis, Royce Lewis, even like Skubal, like just like Jose Ramirez of these guys does seem like just play it safe, just take Jose Ramirez, pick like 9 or whatever, pick 8.
That's how I ended up with him at pick 9 last year. It was like I had a number of 8 guys that I wanted. There was 8 guys I wanted, and of course, all 8 of them went. And then I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take J-Ram because it's consistent and it's at third base, and that that worked out. And yeah, that's like exactly what I put. Just there's so much value in the consistency that he brings, as opposed to the kind of the sexy J-Rod, Acuna, Tatis picks that you might be more inclined to take when debating between them.
So Acuna, he's like, does he like? I think once the projections come out, I think he is going to be a lock first rounder. I mean, he probably is going to go in the first round of this. But do you view him as? Is he the riskiest player we've touched on from a health standpoint, or is that Royce? Is that
It's probably Royce, but Acuna is probably very closely behind him, as well as Tatis. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we've seen Acuna return from this ACL injury before. The second one, is it in the same knee? Is it opposite knees? Do you remember? I think
I
it
thought it
might be
was
that.
the same one, but I'm not
Okay,
100%
okay,
sure.
yeah. I mean,
I'll look that up.
like, yeah, I mean, we've seen him return from it, so he knows how to rehab it, and he was a beast.
Yeah,
I just think
it
like,
is the other knee. It is the
okay,
opposite knee. Yep.
okay. So, it didn't hamper his aggressiveness. It did hamper his power a bit that first year, but I just think you can't, like, if you're at the end of the first round and Acuna's there, I wouldn't be able to pass up on him.
It's going to
I'll
be I think you're right. Like I think almost kind of the closer we get to 2025 opening day, the higher he'll be going in drafts.
100%.
And it's kind of an interesting, like, everything's basically gone wrong for Atlanta's hitters this year. They're all
Hmm.
either sort of underperforming or injured, um, other than the great Marcelo Zuna, the big bear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, like, do we think, like, is it just kind of a good heading into 2025, just buy low on Atlanta hitters and expect them all to kind of bounce back, or more kind of case by case with these guys? Because it's like, I mean, all these guys are going to go around, like, a round or two lower than they went last year. Olsen, Riley, Albies. I don't know. I
Yeah, I
kind of,
think
and Michael Harris. I didn't even mention Michael Harris.
yeah, I think it's context dependent. Like a guy like Olsen, I think everything went right for him last year, and
Right.
it was kind of like an inevitable pullback a little bit. Like I mean, I'm not looking right now, but off the top of my head, I remember like he was extremely lucky home run for fly ball rate, and like just a bunch of different metrics that I remember looking at where I was like, everything went as good as it could have gone for him, and in reality, he probably should have had like 10 less home runs than he had last year, and that influences the value greatly. Whereas like Riley, I think he's a guy like J Ram, where just the production is so bankable and consistent, and he's just steady. He doesn't really have any of that batted ball luck that like a guy like Olsen kind of had. So he's somebody that, and even with his slow start, I mean, he's still he's coming around and having another, just
Yeah.
he's on pace to have another really steady year. So I think like from that perspective, like I'd be more inclined to like continue to bet on Riley and buy a dip, especially. Whereas Olsen, um, I think he's more volatile. I do like Harris too, so I'm curious to see how he returns here in about a week or two. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a Mets fan, so I kind of have just been like sitting here watching the Braves, and I'm like, how is it that this team has had like insane injury luck? Like last year, they had nobody get injured. All their hitters played every day. They don't utilize their bench. Like just everything seemed to go right. And I'm like, how is it possible that a team can just have so much luck? And then this year, obviously, things have not gone in a similar manner. And I'm like, all right, well, it's the universe correcting itself a bit. But yeah, I don't think especially from like an Acuna and Riley perspective, I have no reservations going back to the well for those guys.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on Riley. I'm hoping there's a dip to buy. And then with Olsen, it's just every odd year his batting average is up over 250. Every even year it's well below 250. So 2025 could be.
So he's like the opposite. He's got opposite Aaron Nola.
Yes. And then I think so. Betts, I just wasn't sure on. I mean, I love Mookie Betts. He kind of feels like sort of a guy that might go a little bit towards the turn, but he will be playing second base, I think, when he comes back. Or no, he's playing shortstop when he comes back.
He's going to play shortstop, yeah.
So he might just have only shortstop eligibility next year.
I would think he'll get 4 more games at second, just like late game shifts and stuff like that they do. I would think he's going to get it, but if he doesn't, that definitely, that's a little bit of a hit.
And then did you say you had Julio as going in the first round?
I did, yeah.
That one I don't know, because I did look at like the Steamer 600s, because I know there are a decent amount of people in this room that will look at the projections, and yeah, he's not quite in that same range with these guys. I like the idea of buying low on Julio. I guess I'm just not 100% sure he's going in the first round of this particular draft. But
okay, I think that's fair. I mean, he's so streaky that like I had him last year in one of my mains, and like his August carried his entire production. Like, and if you look at his like month by month breakdown this year, it just felt like he was starting to get hot right as he twisted that ankle. I don't know. I think it's another deal where it's just like you see Julio Rodriguez and he was a top 3-4 pick. If you can get him at pick 13, 14 this year, you're gonna. I'll probably jump on. I don't know if this is just dumb logic, and but I think he's. I know like I listen to you, Chris Welsh. I know Welsh has been like on. I've been hearing Welsh talk about J-Rod feels like for 6 years now. And the talent is just very, very good. I know that the team around him, and obviously the home park is suboptimal. There's aspects about his game, like he still chases a lot. It feels like he feels like the need to do everything because everyone around him is so terrible. But if he could get a little lineup protection, I think it would do him a world of good. Just take a little bit of the pressure off him. But I think he's definitely a top 5 talent in the game.
So as we talk through just the options here, like we kind of talked about the guys that we are pretty sure are going to go in the top half of the first round, and the guys that are kind of going to go closer towards the turn. You're going to have a lower KDS, but do you see any like value to being closer to the turn and trying to maybe double tap some of these like kind of bounce back candidate guys, or do you see more value in being up, picking 4th or 5th or something like that, and just getting a guy that you don't even have to think twice about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd prefer to get a Witt or Ohtani or Judge, but I think being in the back half is not the worst thing in the world, especially if some of these guys that are debatable, you can kind of slip to you in the second round and you can grab 2 of them, like we're talking about. Like if I can get like a Mookie and I don't know, Mookie and Tatis with my first 2 picks, I'd love that. So I think it's either good to be very early or to be very late and be able to try to double tap, as opposed to being kind of stuck in the middle and having to make a difficult decision between a guy like Acuna, J-Ram, or like Acuna, J-Rod, Tatis, some of these guys that we've talked about that have injury debates or performance questions. Having to plant your flag on one of those guys, and then I don't know, middle of the second round might be a little tricky. I know I haven't really given too much. My thought thus far have gone to really like the first 20 picks. So I haven't really even thought about like a mid-second round yet. But yeah, I think just being able to get what falls to you and then scoop up whatever is at like left over after the first round is not a bad spot to be either.
So, do you anticipate approaching just pitching in general any differently in the first 15 rounds of this league than you would just a normal middle of the winter DC? Just because it is, there is the chance of it's more likely that a pitcher you take in this mid-August draft is
Right.
injured before the end of the year, and like you might get absolutely nothing. You might get a
Yeah.
Sandy Alcantara type of thing.
Yeah, I think subconsciously I probably will, and I probably, like I said, I probably do it subconsciously with all my early drafts as well. Like I am a person that likes to take early pitching. I like um, aces and bankable, what I view as bankable quality inning production. So I looked through a bunch of my DCs and like I just have a tendency to draft like at least two starters in my first 5 or 6 picks, but um, I might not do it as early. Like if I look at what I did last year, I think I'll do something similar where I'll take you know maybe like 3 bats with my first 4 picks, and then maybe a starter, maybe a closer. So I think I won't be as aggressive taking the starting pitching, and that you see that if you just look at how the ADP trends. Like you see as the winter moves on, the pitching just steadily pushing up. As like you said, you the injuries materialize, and pitchers move to new teams and things like that, and get a little hype behind them. You see those starting pitchers kind of just steadily move up across the board as people feel more confident in what they're drafting. So I'm sure I'll follow that same pattern. I think that's the way to go. I just think that bats are much more bankable, and so much can go wrong with the pitching in the, what is it, 6, 7 months between now and opening day of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like from last year, mentioned Alcantara, but like Felix Bautista was a guy that got drafted in the second round last year. Understandably, first closer off the board, but that obviously went south. So yeah, and Brandon Woodruff went in the fourth round last year.
Sandy, Yuri, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's
Just, I
obviously,
mean, like you wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these guys where just they wouldn't have probably gotten there if
yep.
they'd been doing it later. But okay, this part is this will be fun. So I want to talk about like 3 to 5 players that you expect to get drafted in the first 15 rounds. So the night of the first high stakes draft of the season, who you're most curious about where they'll get drafted. So like could be rookies, could be guys who broke out this year and you want to see how much buy-in there's for next year. Could be guys that just totally busted this year for whatever reason, or guys coming back from injury. Give me the first player that you're just really excited to see where they go in the first 15 rounds.
Yeah, so this isn't necessarily one player. It's kind of like a grouping of players.
Great.
I think in doing this draft and then a couple early drafts last year, like in my opinion, the the way to profit was taking like round 10 to 12 starting pitchers that were going in that range. So it was like Sale and Rodon were the two big ones that stood out to me as like, oh, I like where they're going in this draft. I'm gonna make sure my next couple drafts, I'm gonna, make sure that I'm hitting pitching in rounds 10, rounds 11, round 12. Like even like Brian Wu and Bryce Miller will go in that range too. So I guess that archetype would be like guys that had disappointing years and people lose interest, but have enough of a track record that make them potentially profitable. So I was thinking of it's actually like two teammates. So Musgrove, Darvish, depending on what happens with him with his personal stuff. Jose Barrios, Chris Bassett, and then there's one other pitcher I was thinking about that. Oh, like Bobby Miller. I think like those are the types of guys that could go in like the round 10 to 12 range that um, could be like profitable next year. I'm assuming they're not going to have a lot of interest. I'm curious to see where they go in this draft because they're just like the types that would I think people will just be like, I'm going to let them go. I'm going to prioritize something else.
That's interesting. Yeah, so Musgrove, Darvish, Barrios, Bassett, and Miller. Bobby Miller is just a nightmare for me to rank right now for Dynasty. There's like nothing positive to point to.
I know.
It's just kind of all you're just hanging everything on basically what you thought about him before the 2024 season, and if you look at anything from 2024, it's just gonna scare you away.
Yeah.
Then Rob D, I think he might have been like the first person to drop Jose Barrios in a main. I don't track that stuff closely, but I think he dropped in a main that we're in together about a month ago.
I think him and I think Verlander also, he got very aggressive with those drops.
And then, I don't know. Like I was in on Chris Sale for this year. I don't know if I'm going to be in on any of these 5 guys you listed for 2025.
Yeah, it's not so much a name as much as it is like just trying to identify a pitcher or pitchers with potential that people are not like excited about or are just dropping to a spot where there's a potential for profit. So, like I said, it was kind of like I was trying to put a round peg into a square hole, where it's just like I was trying to think of guys that were drafted in that like round 5, round 6 range this year that are going to drop to like 10, 11, 12. So, maybe not the best example, but I have a couple more. So we can, that I think.
What do you think about maybe like a guy like Cody Senga could fit into this a little bit? He's gonna go higher, I think, than these guys maybe. But with Musgrove, it's kind of like how healthy is he?
How does he look when he comes back? Right. But that's like what I think Musgrove was the original guy because Sale was injured last year. He finished last year looking healthy. The results weren't the best, but like he finished healthy. I could see something similar with Musgrove where he was like a 6th, 7th round pick this year. Obviously he had a bunch of health issues, but he's looking like he's throwing 94, 95 on rehab right now. If he finishes and has a really good, month, 6 weeks to end the year. But people look at the overall results, they might say he's like a round 10, 11 guy. I'd probably grab a lot of Musgrove in round 10 next year. But I have a lot of round 6 Musgrove this year, and it's killing me. So,
so 2 pitchers I had written down were Jacob deGrom and Spencer Strider. I won't be the person that takes those guys in our 15 round draft, but I assume they'll both get taken in the first 15 rounds. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. So I actually have a list of Tommy John returnees because it's a pretty exciting list. So deGrom, Strider, first 2 definitely, but then Shane McClanahan, Yuri Perez, Sandy Alcantara, Andrew Painter. Those were all guys that I listed as guys I'm curious to see where they're going to go. I don't think we're going to see anything out of McClanahan. We're not going to see anything out of Yuri. We're not going to see anything out of Sandy or Painter. We're not going to see anything out of those guys the rest of the year, but deGrom, we probably will see a couple of starts. So,
well, it'll be depending on when we do the draft. We might even get a deGrom start before we draft. But yeah, I mean, I like, where do you, if we just did the draft tonight and deGrom hasn't pitched at all, if you just kind of had to ballpark it, like, do you think he's like a top 100 pick?
I think probably like round I was gonna say like round 7, so it's kind of right on the edge there. If you don't see him at all, that might be way too low. He might go higher than that, but
I just have
he's
no
kind.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if someone took him in like the 4th round.
yeah. I could
But
see
I
it.
just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, who are some another guy there or another grouping that you're excited to see where they go?
Yeah. So now I kind of listed out just two names that I'm very curious about. So first, I expect him to go a little higher than the second guy, so I'll list him first. Corbin Carroll.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
I have I had so much Corbin Carroll in 2023. I have no Corbin Carroll in 2024, and I have a feeling I might have a lot of Corbin Carroll in 2025, depending on where he's going to be going.
yeah, I I concur with everything you said. I do have a little bit of Corbin Carroll this year, regrettably, but I do expect to be back in. It's just a question of sort of where the price is, so for guys like that, where I kind of expect to be having a decent amount of exposure to. In past years, I haven't been afraid to just be the person that sets the min or whatever,
Yeah.
or that type of thing. I'm wondering maybe for this draft, I might like just sort of have a round grade on Carroll, and like if he's there in say the 3rd round or whatever, then I will take him, and if someone takes him ahead of that, that's fine.
Right.
But I don't know where he'll go. Like I think
Yeah.
he.
Well, I think that's a good thought process, because that was one of the things I was going to say. I feel like you kind of set the market a little bit on some of these guys in this draft last year, and then in subsequent DCs, people referred to it. I think like what caught my eye, it still stands out to me because we did our DC auction and I nominated this guy, just knowing from drafting with you in this draft, and then I think maybe a couple other DCs, or at least looking at your boards. Wyatt Langford. I think you took him round 13 in this draft, and I remember when that happened, I was like, whoa. And in DCs after, he was consistently going no later than that. He was going round 10, round 11, round 12 in DC the rest of DC season. So I think you really like set the market there. So it's kind of one of those things where it's almost sometimes for somebody like you, where people are paying attention to what you're doing and value your input on prospects and stuff like that. It's almost better to like let the market see what the market is going to yield on guys, as opposed to like maybe planting your flag as to, hey, I'm this is my bold take. I know you're not afraid to do that and kind of like put your cards on the table and say how you feel about players. And people really care what I do in drafts. I That's my approach. Which is like, if I might let the market dictate what.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to cite my Paul Skeens pick in the 23rd round instead of my
Oh, I
Langford
missed
pick
that one.
13th round. But yeah, no, I definitely loaded up on Langford and that kind of yeah, like late 100s, early 200s if I'm remembering. Or no, it would be like 160, 170, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that the power hasn't been there consistently with Langford. So yeah, I think that's a good example. Yeah, I think that's something I'm going to kind of adjust a little bit in my DCs this year, is kind of try to, knowing that I'm going to do 5 or 6 DCs at least, not feel like I have to get all my targets in the first DC I do,
Right.
and just kind of seeing like, because it could, even if I think like Wyatt Langford should go in the 13th round, if I can get Wyatt Langford in the 17th round for a couple months, that would be better than taking him in the 13th
Right.
round.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. 100%. Yeah. The
So
last name I had,
yeah, go for it.
the last name I had was Trout. Is like this the round? This is the year we see him drop to like round 10 or later. It should be, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I think this room is going to be probably ahead of the curve on Trout. I think that was probably the case in each of our too early DCs so far. I think
He went at the beginning of round 6 in last year.
right, and then I think like Zach Waxman got him like super late the first time we did it too, relative to what the offseason ADP ended up being for Trout. So yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised at all if Trout didn't go in the first 7 rounds of ours this year. He'll go in the first 15. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a sad topic, but it is what it is. How about this name? Where do you think Brenton Doyle is going to go?
Probably like, I would say between rounds, like round 10, round 11, I think.
Huh.
Is that way too late?
I don't. I mean, okay. So last year, where'd Nolan Jones go? Nolan Jones was in the 8th round.
Oh, okay.
He was Rob D's first pick, or not the first overall pick, but like that was
at once we reset and
right.
And yeah.
I think Doyle's going to go higher than Jones did last year. Like I think Brenton Doyle. So Brenton Doyle right now he's 26. He turns 27 in May. In 109 games, he's got 19 homers, 21 steals, hitting 266, playing excellent defense. I don't know. I kind of think he's like a 5th rounder. I don't know. Does that sound crazy to you? Like that's why I brought him up, just because
That's good.
I think you can make a case for taking him pretty high, but there's not like any kind of name value or no. I don't
Track
think anyone
record,
in this
right?
league was like, yeah, I gotta get as much Brenton Doyle as I can this year necessarily, but
yeah, I mean, I was gobbling up in like round 20 in these DCs when I could, because like you said, it's going to be everyday playing time, and it's in Coors at a minimum. Half his home games are at Coors. That was my thought process, was like, it's a guy that's going to play every day, and he's going to play half his games in Coors, and he steals bases and occasionally hits a home run. So that's enough for me. I mean, I'm probably not going to take him round 5, but I don't know. I think like I revert back to like last year, and in that round 10 range of outfield, there was just so many guys I liked, with Duran, Nimmo, Newt Bar. Not as good of a story for Newt Bar, but like Stephen Kwan, just a lot of. I think he kind of fits in that mold. So I think that's where I'm thinking like round 10, 11. But all those guys have had such good years that they might just move up to round 5, round 6, round 7. So that's a good call out. I don't think it'll be round 5, but I can't argue with anything you said about like what he's going to provide for your team.
Who would you rather have for 2025, Brenton Doyle or Randy Arozarena?
I think Doyle, especially now with Randy in Seattle. I think Brenton Doyle.
How about Lawrence Butler or Randy Arozarena?
All things being held equal, that's tough. I'd probably take Butler, especially going to this new park in Sacramento. I think it's just going to only help his power, which is already, doesn't really need much help, but he's been hitting leadoff for them. Doyle's been kind of I know he's hitting now like he's hitting like third through fifth, but I'll take the extra ABs for a leadoff guy and a sneakily pretty good offense going to a much better park now.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on both of those. Going to be interesting to see where those guys go.
Yeah.
So we're running. We're up over an hour here. Anything else you wanted to hit on about this too early meatball?
No, I mean, I
Steve?
think this is good. You know, like it's I was saying to Rob on our pod earlier this week. You know, like the trade deadline's done, all our games done. So now it's kind of like that August period where you start saying like who's going to be a first round pick next year, and that's the debates on podcasts, and we kind of just put the debate to rest and actually have 15 really good players doing a draft that matters, and let everyone else pick it apart. But it's not a mock draft; it's a real draft.
It is. It's a very real draft.
Yep.
And props again to Jason DuPont for being in first place so far. Pretty impressive too that to be in the top 50 of the overall. It's definitely a loaded league, but also just to have picked as early as we did and to be doing that well, very impressive. And
totally.
shouts to Steve and buddy John Fish, who's in third, Bloomfield sitting there in fourth, Bubba and the Bloom going 4-5, and then me and Jenny Butler and bunch of really good players who probably just got decimated with injuries after us. So thank you so much for joining me, Dom.
Yeah, no problem, James. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Anytime.
The podcast is brought to you by Pick Six, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Use code RWPicks for $50 in Pick Six credits with a $5 deposit. And those dynasty rankings will be updated on the site either Thursday or Friday. So stay